Hey folks, welcome to a special edition vintage video here on the Bosch & Roll channel. What's special about this one is that while usually I record live in real time over my matches as I play them, this one I am going to be doing commentary over pre-recorded matches. The reason for that is that I made the top 8 of Vintage Champs at Eternal Weekend. It was played on Magic Online this year. Obviously, with COVID-19 restrictions, they couldn't hold it in real life. And this is an event that is very important to me. It's my favorite event of the year, and I couldn't play and do my best while recording in real time. So hopefully you'll enjoy my pre-recorded, post-added commentary on these matches in the top 8. I didn't want to do nothing, so this is what I did. That said, this is the deck I was playing. This is RUG Xerox. There are 2 other videos I recorded leading up to Eternal Weekend on the channel. If you want to see more matches with this deck, they're out there. And this is the deck I thought was the best for the tournament. This is just a classic control deck, as Richard Garfield intended. You counter some spells, you draw some cards, and then once your opponent is completely ground into the dirt, you kill them with whatever is left over, whether it's your creature or your planeswalker. Just classic Magic the Gathering. And it was a strong performer for me. Over the 3 vintage main events, I started out 6-0 in the first one, and then lost all 3 of my last rounds to go 6-3. And then the second event, I started out 1-2, but then rallied off 7 in a row to finish 8-2 to top 16 that event. And in the final event, I converted, I made the top 8. And you're about to watch my top 8 matches. Before we get started, I want to pitch my tournament report that I wrote. I kept a live blog of my experience at Eternal Weekend going for the entire 6 days that the tournament ran. There were 3 days of Legacy and 3 days of Vintage. And in real time, I filled in all of my thoughts, my matchup analysis on every match I played. There are 52 matches here. It takes up 48 pages, over 20,000 words, and it's all Legacy and Vintage, what's really going on in my head, mistakes I made, things I think I did well. There's a lot to learn here, and I think you'll enjoy it. So please check that out. The link is in the description. Now that the pitch is out of the way, let's go see some top 8 Magic. Alright, so here we are. In my first round, I was on the draw against Dredge. I did not know I was playing against Dredge. I didn't know what any of my top 8 opponents would be on. I did know I was on the draw, though, because this person was 4th and I was 5th. As you can see, I kept an insane hand. I only play 3 Moxen, Black Lotus, Ancestral Recall, and Time Walk as power cards in my deck, and 4 of them are in my hand. So this hand is pretty bonkers. I can do so many things. And unfortunately, I'm against Dredge, so most of the things I'm able to do don't matter. The big decision that I'm making right now is how to sequence my mana for what colors I can make. So if I make Black Lotus and sack it for red, then I can cast Ancestral Recall and protect it with Pyroblast, and then I can cast Wrenn and 6 with what's left over. However, by doing this, I lose the ability to draw Wasteland, because I have to use the Tropical Island for my blue mana. If I had chosen not to play around a counterspell, I could have played Wasteland this turn and wasted their Bazaar. That was the only real decision I got to make this game. As you're going to see pretty soon, I'm just going to get dumpstered. That was a great turn. But the thing about Dredge is they're not really playing Magic the way that other people are. And that is both their strength and their weakness. So if I was able to waste the Bazaar here, they would not have been able to activate it and shred through their deck like this. They would have gotten to Dredge 6 instead of 18, which is obviously an insane deal. But because they got the the Bazaar, they get to put all the stuff into play that I can never come back from. But the pros and cons of this, in my head, I was thinking, if this Ancestral Recall is countered, I can never win. But the reality is that if Bazaar is in play, I also can never win. So I think I have to take the chance on Ancestral Recall getting countered. Or I need to not preordain first. Like, I did use my Mox Sapphire to cast preordain, and I was trying to bait Mental Misstep by making that play. But I think all of that is wrong. I think I should have just Mox, Lotus, Ancestral Recall off of the Mox, leaving up Lotus that I could crack for red and Red Blast if I need to, and then I still have my land drop. I can play Preordain off my land later if I need to, if I don't find a Wasteland. But I did find a Wasteland. Yeah, I definitely just played in a way that was not conducive to winning the game. So from here, they just cast some therapies, make some zombies. At the end of the turn, their prized amalgams are going to trigger, and Cat in the Hat, that's that. I cannot come back. Like there is no like Pyroclasm in my deck. There's no Wrath, not in the main deck anyway. I have the Wrath in my sideboard, which we're going to get to in a minute. But this game, so they have 3 prized amalgams. That's 9 plus 4 zombies. That's another 8 plus 1. 9 plus 8 is already 17. And then they have the bonus damage set, lethals on board, and I brick with a land, and then we just go to sideboards. So the obvious stuff in my sideboard is Leyline of the Void. You know that from every format, no matter where you're coming from, Leyline of the Void comes in against Dredge. If you're new to Vintage, Tabernacle at Pendrell might surprise you. Dredge, their whole thing is putting all sorts of creatures into play without spending any mana. So if you give every creature an upkeep cost of 1 or else it dies, that is just a recurring Plague Wind every turn against Dredge. Just unless their creatures have haste, they're going to die before they get to do any damage. What I take out, Red Blast, though they do have some blue pitch spells like Force of Will, Force of Negation, Red Blast, holding up Red Blast is not really what I want to be against Dredge. However, the Flusterstorms are excellent because their way to remove Leyline of the Void, like they can barely win with Leyline of the Void in play. They have Hollow One, and that's about it. So the way they're going to remove Leyline is with Force of Vigor, and Flusterstorm does counter that. So I want everything in the deck that can counter Force of Vigor. And I want things in the deck that can deal with Hollow One. So my Dak Fadens are the best thing. Dak can just steal the Hollow One, then it's mine. Force of Will can counter Hollow One. And Tabernacle at Pendrell gives them an upkeep cost that they can't pay. So I brought in the obvious stuff, and I cut the obvious stuff. Now what I'm thinking is if I want Nimble Obstructionist or not. Nimble Obstructionist, 3 mana is a big ask against Dredge, but if I could like stifle a Clutch Bazaar activation, also it's just a 3/1 creature. Like if I can put it into play and ping it with Wrenn and 6, it could exile all their Bridge from Below. Like that's what I'm thinking about right now. I don't think that's actually worth doing. Like, to bring that in, I would cut another Lightning Bolt. And then the question is, what good is Lightning Bolt? So I do it here. And this is like already planning for Plan C. Like Plan A is my sideboard cards, Plan B is my control deck, and then Plan C is how do I get one of my own creatures. So this hand, it has a Leyline. When you keep 7 with Leyline, life is good. Being on the play means that they can Force of Vigor my Leyline right away. And there's an awkward timing lineup here between Force of Vigor and Force of Negation. Because they're from the same cycle of only do this on your opponent's turn cards, when anytime they could cast Force of Vigor, I can't cast Force of Negation, and vice versa. So my plan here is to get this leyline into play, hope they don't have force right now, which I get to check with this Cataxian Probe. And as we can see, their hand is just Bazaar of Baghdad and a bunch of Dredge cards. Like, they don't have a single pitch card there, which is great. So I found land number 3. That means as long as they don't force in my next upkeep, I can start holding up hardcast Force of Negation. I didn't play the Mox because if they do draw the Force of Vigor, if they do draw Force of Vigor and cast it in my upkeep, I don't want to give them 2 targets when I could have just given them 1. Alright, so we survived that. Now I'm running out my 3rd mana, so now I'm just going to hold up Force of Negation forever. Like, they cannot reasonably win if Leyline's in play, and I already have the DAC in case they do find a hollow one, so just hold up this 3 mana forever. I think I should not have played that second Mox. The reason being, if they go for Force of Negation in the end step, or Force of Vigor in the end step, and I go on Force of Negation, then that would be my 3rd spell for Mindbreak Trap. Like, if they did perfectly thread the needle, and the 3 cards they drew were exactly Force of Vigor, green card, Mindbreak Trap, I did play into that a little bit when I didn't need to. And those are the sort of tiny little calculations you need to be making when you're ahead against Dredge. Because if you get behind, you're going to get behind fast. So now I have 5 mana. I can run out this Wrenn and 6 and still hold up the Force of Negation. I'm absolutely not playing this DAC here. And the Wrenn is great. That means I'm going to hit all of my land drops, and I have a long-term plan. Because if Wrenn emblems up in the late game, then very few decks can beat a Wrenn emblem. There's the hollow one. I have the DAC in hand already. And because of Wrenn rebuying my land, I have 6 mana to DAC and hold up Force of Negation still. So DAC steals hollow one, Wrenn rebuys the land, we're still holding up force, and now I have a clock. Plus DAC is going to be able to fix my draws. Wrenn and 6 plus DAC is a great combo, because I have plenty of lands in play here. Wrenn can pick a land up from my graveyard, DAC can discard it, and it's just free cards. So they have another hollow one, and another Bazaar. I'm not worried about a single hollow one because I'll just trade off and then I'm miles ahead. Like, it is very much on them to figure this out. Force of Vigor is something they're very interested in right now because it kills not only Leyline but their stolen hollow one. And Tarmogoyf. Found that one on the top. Tarmogoyf is bigger than Hollow One, and it's not an artifact. So that Goyf can get crazy. We're past the point where Lightning Bolt is going to be relevant this game. And there's that Wrenn and 6 combo, discard 2 lands, get one back right away. Even found Wasteland, so now I can start pinching off their Bazaar, so it gets even harder for them to ever get out of this game. Like, Bazaar digging for the force and the protection is their only plan. I didn't attack there because I didn't want them to just block with Hollow One and trade off, because next turn I can steal the other Hollow One with Dak, and then the game is going to end real fast. Like, my plan for next turn is steal Hollow One, waste the last Bazaar, and then they're left with no permanence against my Tarmogoyf and 2 Hollow Ones, my Hollow 2s. They found a third Hollow One. That's 3 of the 4 that they play accounted for. And we have 2 of them I'm going to control 2 of them, and I can easily attack through the third one. So they're out of ways they can actually win this game without removing Leyline. This long pause in my upkeep usually means one thing, which is they are deciding what to target with Force of Vigor. And there it is. I have the Force of Negation that I've been holding up the entire game, and it finally pays off. The crazy thing about Dredge is, even given all of this, I could have still lost this game if they removed Leyline there. I guess it might be unlikely because I'm about to waste the Bazaar. But it is definitely... Dredge can win out of some BS positions because they are just not playing Magic the way that most of us agreed to play. So now I'm fine with Dak dying. Like, he's not actually doing much at this point. Plus, getting a Planeswalker in the graveyard grows the Goyf, and they're going to be dead pretty quick from here. And they just packed it up. They didn't even want to keep playing. So we're back to the sideboard. I realized that I made a big error, which is I forgot to bring in my Shattering Spree. Like I said, I want every answer to Hollow One in the deck. So Shattering Spree should be in the deck. I've been doing that all weekend against Hollow One decks. This is my first time I played against actual Dredge, but I've played against the various Hogak Vine Bazaar decks a lot. Those decks were very popular this weekend. And I like bringing in Shattering Spree against them. It's one card that can answer up to 4 Hollow Ones. If your Leyline is doing its job, then that's all you have left to worry about. And having a way to dig for it is great. So I cut the Lightning Bolt. That doesn't actually do anything. The whole like bolt my own creature to remove Bridges plan, I just don't think that plan is where I want to be. You see me futzing around with the Obstructionist, the Wrenn and 6, the Lightning Bolt. And I ended up with Nimble Obstructionist back in the deck. Oh, I honestly think I should have Oko in the deck and not Nimble Obstructionist. Though that may or may not matter. They're both blue. They both present a clock. I don't know. That's your mileage may vary. The important things is to have all your ley lines in, your Shattering Spree, your Tabernacles, and keep your Flusterstorms. So didn't get a easy bread and butter 7 with Leyline this time. The 6 is also bad. 5 is bad. And the 4 has Leyline. So we're on 4. But we do have Leyline and Bazaar. So what this does is, even if they do have Force of Vigor, they're going to have to expose a Bazaar to this wasteland. And if they only kept 1 Bazaar, then we could have a fair game, a reasonable game, even in the absence of Leyline. And by activating Bazaar on their turn, that digs for the Leyline, so they get to plan out their turn a little bit, but it means that they don't even get the 1 Dredge dump. Like, if they were to Force of Vigor in my upkeep with Bazaar still untapped, then they would get to put Dredgers in the graveyard and start slow dredging. But because they did that on their own turn, which is probably right. I mean, their spells, they want to get some velocity. That gives them the out to a turn 1 hollow one. It's definitely right to activate Bazaar there. But it did mean that I get to clip their Bazaar for free. So now I just have to take my time. I can't protect this ley line. I have this Brainstorm to get ahead. I drew the second ley line, which is Black Lotus is the only way in the deck to cast it. So I'm pretty excited to shuffle that away with Brainstorm. Remember, in Vintage, you only get one Brainstorm. All right, there's the Force of Vigor. So the cool thing about all these forces is that now that Leyline is gone, even without Bazaar, they can just get up to 8 cards in hand and discard to hand size and then start slow dredging, which is scary. Like, I can definitely lose that game if I don't have something else going on. So every time they pitch to a force, like Force of Negation, Force of Will, even this Mental Misstep, that sets back their ability to slow dredge. Also, along the way here, I've drawn this Tabernacle, so if they do get anything going, I have an insurance policy. Look at that. So they have had no mana this game. They haven't even had a land for most of the game. And they have removed a troublesome permanent and countered 2 troublesome spells. I just keep finding action. My deck is full of action. My deck is very good at drawing cards. That is the whole point. These top deck wars should favor me. They only have 3 cards in their whole deck that matter, and it's their 3 remaining copies of Bazaar. So I'm going to always lead on the worst one. Mox and Time Walk don't do anything here. Like, putting Time Walk on bottom so I draw a different random card is the same as putting Time Walk on top and casting Time Walk to get another draw step. So I might as well just send it into the bottom and draw a fresh one now. They've already used their Mental Misstep, so if they want to counter this, it's going to set them back another 2 turns of slow dredging. And they did have the Force of Will. All right, now we're ready for Hollow One, if they ever find Bazaar. So they're just bricking. Well, I'm bricking. The only brick they have is not Bazaar. Like, Bazaar's the only card that's actually a banger for them, but I really need to get something going before they find the Bazaar. And they're getting very close to slow dredging. All right, so Wrenn and 6 can regrow a fetch land from my graveyard, and the fetch land can fetch for Mystic Sanctuary and put Ancestral Recall back on top of my deck. This also means that I have Wastelands forever. Even if they draw all 3 Bazaars left in the deck, I'm ready to destroy all 3 of them. If they can destroy my Tabernacle somehow, which I don't think Classic Dredge can do. The Hogak decks do play Wasteland for Tabernacle, but I don't think Classic Dredge has a way to remove it. But if they did, Wrenn can get it back. That came up a number of times this weekend with the Hogak decks. So they did get 1 discard in. They discarded a Stinkweed Imp, so they are able to slow dredge now. I am passing the turn because I don't want to get Force of Negation. I want to play around as much as possible. And they've already used 2 Force of Wills. And I'm not sure how many Force of Negations they actually have, or forces overall. Like, the lists vary a lot, and this was not an open deck list tournament. But I'm going to play around what I can, especially now that they're dredging. So their dredge did hit 2 Bridge from Belows and a Prized Amalgam. And an Icarid, I believe. So Icarid can get the train rolling. It comes into play, it triggers Prized Amalgam. Icarid dies in the end step and gives them a zombie. I have the Tabernacle. Like, this is not a huge problem either way. But I am going to cantrip to see if I can find Lotus and get this ley line back into play. All right, there it is. So that's what I was looking for. Now that I found that, the next box I need to check is finding counterspells to protect the ley line. Because the Tabernacle can beat what they have going on. Like, I can clear the board, that's not a problem. I just need to keep the board clear once I do that. And if I can find a counterspell to back up my ley line, that's the key to that. So what I'm doing now is I'm not going to play Leyline right now because I've cast so many spells that they could easily Mindbreak Trap it. So the DAC was kind of a bait spell. That if DAC resolves, then Leyline probably will too. But I have Time Walk, so I'm just going to take a walk, and then next turn I can play Leyline as spell number 1, and don't even have to think about Mindbreak Trap. That also gives me another turn of activating DAC to try to find a counterspell to protect the Leyline once it's in play. Just all of my decisions are being made to minimize what they might do to stop me. All right, there's Flusterstorm. That should lock this up. They're going to get to bring back the 1 Icarid in their graveyard, and that's going to trigger the Prized Amalgam. They're not going to get a Bridge from Below token because the Icarid is going to get exiled on the way out from Leyline. But one of these Planeswalkers is going to take 3, and then I just have to deal with a 3/3 creature on board after that. And I have, like I said, I keep saying, the Tabernacle is there if I need it. So as expected, they bring back Icarid, which triggers Prized Amalgam. This doesn't matter. I think they know that, but they have to do what they have to do. It's not getting any better. Like, I don't care if my Planeswalkers just take some damage. They can't kill either of them. I also don't care. Like, I could block with Dreadhorde Arcanist. It dies and exiles their bridges, but I don't care about their bridges either because their creatures can't go to the graveyard. This is pretty well mopped up. I'm also just aggressively fetching all the lands out of my deck because I'm very close to having all of them, and I don't want to draw anymore. Like, deck thinning in general in Magic is mostly overblown and matters less than people think it does. But in this particular case, where almost all of the lands in my deck actually are in play or in the graveyard or in my hand, thinning one out is a big deal. So Dreadhorde Arcanist gets to recast Ancestral Recall. I find Tarmogoyf, who is as big as it gets. I believe it's a 7/8 here. The only thing missing is Tribal. Yep, there is no conceivable way to lose the game at this point. I'm ahead on board. They can't touch their graveyard. I have a counterspell. I have the biggest creature. And this Ponderer just found Gitaxian Probe into Force of Will. So I can take a peek at what they're working with. Just know what I have to play around. And the answer is nothing. They just have a bunch of like random Dredge cards and Force of Negation. So now I have Flusterstorm plus Force of Negation. And this game is over. They're going to play a few more turns, but there's nothing they can do. So they're just enjoying their time in the Eternal Weekend top 8. You're not required to concede, and that's okay. I draw an Oko. I have 3 counterspells now. They are Deadzos on board. So I can attack with the Goyf and 2 Elks. They can block Goyf. They go to 2. Wrenn and 6 puts them to 1. All of the lands are now out of my deck. I think there's a second Tabernacle still in there. But I don't even need to draw any more cards or mess around. My hand is already unbeatable, so let's just get into the zone and end the game. Incidentally, pinging them with Wrenn turns off Force of Will. Not that I think that matters in the slightest. And GG's in the chat. On to the top 4. So here's my top 4 match. I'm on the draw again. Again, I don't know what I'm playing against. My hand is just a solid cast cantrips, cast planeswalkers, gain value sort of hand. I have been keeping hands like this in the dark all weekend. I think this hand is fine, but if they're doing anything super vintagey, this hand could be in trouble. I have no Force of Will, no fast mana, and they're on Workshop, which is the worst. This is actually the first time I've played against Workshop in 31 rounds of Vintage, which is crazy considering it's a pillar of the format. I'm very lucky that all they had was Ravager, and even more lucky that I ripped this Mox Emerald off the top. So now I can play Wrenn and 6 and just pick off this Ravager. Wrenn and 6 is also excellent against shops because they try to constrict your mana, and just blanking Wasteland while hitting all your land drops if they don't waste you is a great way to get ahead of what they're doing. I really thought I got away with something there, pinging that Ravager. Like I felt like it would be hard to lose from that spot. But they have Mystic Forge, which, if you're not a Vintage player, that lets you cast artifacts and colorless spells off the top of your deck. Like this Thorn of Amethyst. So now they can cast their deck off the top of their deck, and all my spells cost more. So this high velocity hand that I have, these 2 cantrips, the Planeswalker, everything, just don't matter anymore. It costs twice as much. Instead of casting 3 spells this turn, I'm going to cast 1. And I'm going to lead with the Tarmogoyf. Like, I just want to get that going. If they don't put pressure on me quickly, Tarmogoyf can get the game over with. It can also tangle with most of the creatures they can produce. They need to get several creatures working together to get with me, or to get around a Tarmogoyf. I did draw Mental Misstep, which there is 1 target in Shop's decks, and it's Soul Ring. So that's one of the cards that gets boarded right out. And here it is in my hand. The good news is, if they have Soul Ring, I actually can cast Mental Misstep through the Sphere, because I can pay 2 life and 1 mana to do it. It's a miracle. Not that this really matters. Like, it's going to slow them down a little, but I don't know. I'm stoked to do this. This gets an instant in the graveyard for Tarmogoyf, and anything that interacts at all at this stage of the game. Like, basically, I need to draw Oko and turn their Mystic Forge into an Elk before they get too far ahead on board. That's my plan here. Oko is the only answer to a resolved Mystic Forge in the main deck. Mox came off the top, Wasteland came out of their hand. Phyrexian Revoker turns off Wrenn and 6. So they have this sphere constricting my mana already. Wasteland is going to waste one of my lands, and I can't buy back with Wrenn anymore. So now I'm in this super tight squeeze. Things are getting worse by the second. So far, I believe they've cast 5 spells off of that Mystic Forge. Found a redundant Wrenn and 6 that's already turned off. Putting back Wrenn with the Brainstorm is easy because it's off already. The tougher choice is what the other card's going to be. Like, am I ever going to get to this Narset? Is it going to do anything if I do get to it? I ended up keeping Narset and shuffling away the extra land. I do still have Wasteland I can play. I don't think I'm supposed to attack there. Clearly I didn't, so that's what I thought at the time. But even looking back at it now with fresh eyes, like, I don't care if they attack Wrenn and 6 and kill it because Wrenn is already turned off. But if they attack and kill Wrenn and 6, then Lightning Bolt for Revoker is not a good draw anymore. Like, they have too many artifacts to Lightning Bolt Ravager. They can just eat a few things. I'm also not sure how dedicated they would be to removing Tarmogoyf. Like, they could eat enough artifacts with Ravager to just block and kill Tarmogoyf. Though I suspect that they would just, like, take their 4. They're at 18. They can afford it. But now they have Infinity Billion mana. The way they tapped this, I figured it was Stonecoil Serpent or Walking Ballista coming, neither of which I can actually beat. Stonecoil Serpent is bigger than Tarmogoyf, and I can't Oko it because it has protection from multicolor. And Walking Ballista is terrifying in its own way because they have Arcbound Ravager. So Ballista plus Ravager is just a ticking time bomb. At some point, they're going to be able to just attack, push enough damage, and then sacrifice enough artifacts to Ravager and put the counters onto Ballista and just Hadoken me from some high life total. I'm doing my best here. Drew a land, preordain into 2 more lands. Find the 3rd Wrenn and 6 that is not helpful. Try to take out a shop, slow them down a little. Like, to win this game at this point, I would need to draw lightning. I would need them to whiff this turn, just like if they just like runner lands on top of their deck, just 3 lands, and don't get any value out of their forge. And then I draw Lightning Bolt to kill Revoker. Then I rebuy Wasteland with Wrenn and 6, hit their shop. And then maybe they're stuck under their own sphere and have to slow down a lot. But that's not what happened. They found Foundry Inspector, which negates their sphere on their side. So their artifacts cost 1 less. Their creatures are already unaffected by sphere, so their creatures actually cost 1 less, and their non-creature artifacts cost the normal amount. And now everything costs 2 less. So as long as there is an artifact on top of their deck, they can just keep chucking them into play. And they found a Revoker that they can cast for free. That's going to name Mox Emerald, take me off another mana. And at this point, I think they might have a lethal attack here already, but they don't need to make it. They can just take their time. They know they can't lose this game. Like, Ballista's on 3. Yeah, I just have to shuffle this and pray for Lightning Bolt, and that's not it. So this game's over. Yeah, I'm dead next turn to the attack plus ballista. So my sideboard is not super stacked for shops because, like I said, I haven't played against it in 31 rounds. I do have the absolute banger of Energy Flux. That gives all artifacts an upkeep cost of 2, or you sacrifice them. It's like a super tabernacle for artifacts. And then I have Collector Oof, and then I have 1 Shattering Spree, 1 Nature's Claim. That was 2 Shattering Sprees in the first 2 events, but I didn't play against shops at all in the first one. And in the second one, I ended up losing to Oath of Druids and Underworld Breach, which are enchantments. So I wanted to diversify that slot a little bit to make it a little more applicable in different matchups. Shattering Spree is an absolute banger against shops, and Nature's Claim is just fine, but Nature's Claim is fine in other spots too. I brought the Tabernacles over thinking that they might have some utility. Like, shops does tend to want to use all of its mana every turn, and a lot of its lands tap for 2. So, like, if they have to tap Ancient Tomb to save 1 creature, I've denied them a whole mana. Mishra's Workshop itself cannot pay this sort of tax. Workshop mana can only be used to cast artifacts. So, paying for the upkeep cost of a Tabernacle, you can't use Workshop. Paying for days, you can't use Workshop. Like, all that kind of thing. Like, Spell Pierce, nope. So, Tabernacle, there are spots where it could be good. Like, especially if I get Wastelands going. Like, if I can waste their Ancient Tomb, then play Tabernacle, they might lose 3 or 4 creatures. But I decided not to bring them in. I have the Energy Fluxes. I have lots of spot removal. I just have to hope that I can hit my land drops before they overwhelm my answers. This hand, unfortunately, it has Force of Will, but it doesn't do anything. Like, having Mystic Sanctuary is a huge beating. This 6, or this is 5 already. We've gone to 5. It was a no lander into a hand with Force of Will and only Mystic Sanctuary for blue mana. That's just I do a Wasteland. So I'm on 5 here, and this hand is good. The problem is that I have to put back 2 cards from it, the old mulligan. So I can like keep Preordain and Oko, so then I can Preordain and still have Force. I could keep Lightning Bolt, hoping for a clean 1-for-1. I can keep Wrenn and 6 and hope to draw a red land. Like, if I put Bolt on the bottom, I could get... Like, I think what I should have done is put Bolt on the bottom and then just play my land and say go. And then I can force their play, waste their land if I don't draw a red source or a colored source, and if I do draw a colored source, I just get Wrenn and 6, and then I'm way ahead. But I ended up keeping the Bolt because they played the Ravager and the Revokers last game. Like, they are Ravager shops, not Golos shops. Lightning Bolt does trade with a lot of things in their deck. I was hoping for a clean 1-for-1. And here's the danger zone. This is where my opponents sequenced their things well. So I let Sphere resolve, hoping to just play through it. But notice that they played it off Mishra's Factory and a Mox. Like, they didn't hang out a really good land like Mishra's Workshop or Ancient Tomb. So I'm going to waste them. Like, I can waste here, and I still have the mana up to pay for Sphere if I want to Force a Will something. And I was hoping to catch them under their own Sphere a little bit, but they sequenced correctly. They led on the worst of the 2 lands, and now they just have this Workshop in play. This thing I can Bolt, so I let it resolve. I'm going to Bolt it now before they can empty their hand on me. Like we talked about in the last match, the Foundry Inspector negates the sphere. Like that sphere is all spells, so that just makes all their spells cost the normal amount again. However, bolting on my turn does tap me out, so I can't force. And they have Lodestone Golem. So Lightning Bolt's a great draw. Nature's Claim's a great draw. Shattering Spree is the best draw. I'm never casting Energy Flux this game. It would cost 5 at this point. I keep Wasteland on top just because it is a land. And they have Wasteland in play. Like I'm not going to use my Wasteland on them. I'm just going to tap it for mana. Like their hand's getting pretty low over there. At this point, I'm just hoping like maybe you're out of gas. The Shops deck does tend to come out hard and then sort of peter out. Like all of the things I said last turn, the Lightning Bolt and Shattering Spree are still good draws. Nature's Claim is not a good draw anymore. They did waste my green source. And of course, they were not out of gas. They have more spells. It's a Ravager. So now, even if I draw Lightning Bolt, they could just sack Ravager and put a counter on the Lodestone Golem. And then they have a 6/4 that is basically impossible to kill. I need Shattering Spree. It's Spree or bust. All of my Dax and Okos and stuff, they cost way too much. They're never going to happen. Speaking of Oko, there it is. Send that to the bottom. I have to send Brainstorm to the bottom too, because that costs 3. Like normally when you're looking for something, Brainstorm is one of the best cards. But when Brainstorm costs 3, like I'm about to take 6, maybe 7 if they feed their Mox to the Ravager. Like I'm just on a 2-turn clock. I don't have a turn to Brainstorm. I have to send it to the bottom and just hope to spike Shattering Spree. That's my only out here. And they're still tapping mana. They're still casting spells. They never run out. And that is the game. So they can attack for 7, put me to 7. This has 2 counters on it. They can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess I'm at 1, but I need this fetch land. That turns off Force, that turns off the fetch land. Like I am effectively at 1 after this attack. So that's the game. I'll give you the spoiler. I did not draw Shattering Spree to stay alive, and I don't think I would stay alive even if I did draw it, because this Ballista kills me. So thanks for watching. I wish I had a third match to show you, but it just is like that sometimes. You can't win them all. Hope you enjoyed these 2 matches. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.